Hello folks, I'm Tiso, and this is my review and impressions for Scarlet Nexus. The game is an anime action RPG with heavy focus on the story. At the beginning, you choose one of the two protagonists to play as. Each of their stories have a lot of overlap, about 70% of the game. However, the other 30% or so is unique, so if you want the whole story, then you need to play both routes. There is New Game Plus, which carries over your levels and equipment to your second playthrough, making it a much faster run. On your first playthrough, the story will make more sense if you start with Yuito, our male protagonist, but you can start with Kasane if you really want. One playthrough will take about 19 hours if you don't skip any cutscenes, but the second one will be much faster. Or you can probably watch the anime to get the full story instead of doing multiple playthroughs. I'll talk about that later. But first off, the most important section, the gameplay. The action combat is unique and provides you with a good amount of tools, but some of them won't fully unlock until halfway through the game after getting the full roster. At your disposal, you have the basic quick and charge attacks as well as a high time to initiate some air combos. Then there's your psionic ability, which lets you slam foes with debris that's lying around. The enemies also have a health bar and a guard meter underneath it. If you deplete their guard, you can push L2 to execute them. This will instantly kill any non-boss characters regardless of how much health they have left. Then you have your AI teammates. They really don't do too much on screen, but their main benefit is the ability they can imbue. Each one gives you a slightly different buff to use against the monsters. You have Hanabi, who can imbue your strikes with fire and burn enemies. There's Luca that converts your dashes into teleports and lets you quickly close the distance. There's Joka, who duplicates your projectiles and at later levels even give you more clones so that all your attacks do extra damage. The enemies are designed to be weak against certain abilities, so you end up using most of your squad during the fights. You can also be powered up by 2 or 4 abilities at the same time once you unlock this in the skill tree. These powers won't last forever though, since their energy is consumed over time, which forces you to swap between abilities and keep the combat interesting. In addition to slowly channeling their powers, you can spend 60% of their energy to call them in for a quick damaging assist. Your characters also have a powered up mode that activates automatically after getting full meter, and eventually a rage mode that you can manually activate if you are in a pinch. There are 2 flaws I want to add about the combat though. Like any third-person action game, the camera can be an issue at times, but luckily it was not a frequent problem. The other flaw is the bosses. Well, some of the bosses anyway. Certain fights want you to exploit specific weaknesses, and if you miss your chance at that opening, you'll need to wait around a bit for the next attack rotation to catch it again. Besides combat, another part of the game is hanging out with your teammates at the hideout. This is where you can give them presents and strengthen your bonds, which eventually unlocks additional abilities for your team. As a bonus, all the gifts you give them will be displayed around the room. Just take a look at all the decorations I ended up having in my hideout. So the general gameplay loop is watching some cutscenes to set up the situation, then go through a level filled with combat encounters. Then return to the hideout for rest and bonding time, and repeat. Also, during the story intermissions at the hideout, you can fast travel to previous locations if you want to farm materials or complete quests. Now for the story. Your world is under constant threat from the Others, a strange and aggressive breed of plant-animal hybrids. Your team is one of the groups that can defend the city from these monsters, but it's not gonna be smooth sailing the whole time. Actually, things pick up fairly quickly after completing the soft intro. There is a reason you have 2 playable characters. You follow the path of the one you choose, so the events that happens with the other protagonists are mostly summarized from other characters you interact with instead of seeing them firsthand. There is also an anime with the same name airing on Funimation. So far, the story of the game and anime are following the same major beats, but the game spends more time on the character relationships, while the anime is more focused on the overarching plot. The story of the anime is actually progressing quite fast. Episode 2 of the anime is already around the 3 to 4 hour mark in the game. The game isn't light on details either. You'll be watching cutscenes and listening to dialogue for more than half your playtime. There is also a lot of optional side stories with your party members. As you increase their bonds by progressing through the story and give them gifts at your hideout, you learn more about their past and personalities. That is also how you unlock more combat abilities and team attacks. The gameplay is nice, but if that's all you care about, then you'll be skipping a ton of cutscenes in the game. Time for graphics. As you can tell from all the footage, the game looks great. The characters are gorgeous and each one have a unique design. If you are a fan of anime, then this art style will be quite comforting. However, there is a trade-off. Most of the cutscenes are presented in a comic-like fashion. They do try to keep the visuals interesting by panning a lot and adding character portraits when they talk. And the environment looks great, for the most part. There are some levels that are kind of bland, but then there are others like this vibrant town with neons and towers everywhere. And here is another unique looking area. It's quite futuristic and sleek. To summarize, Scarlet Nexus has a robust combat system that feels much smoother than Code Vein, which was Bandai Namco's previous original action game with an anime aesthetic. I am also looking forward to Tales of Arise with its overhauled battle system. Anyways, back to Scarlet Nexus. The combat feels great and the characters look top-notch. The enemies and some of the stages look pretty gritty, which provides a lot of contrast. This game is also story-driven, with a heavy emphasis on story. You will be sitting back watching cutscenes for more than half the game, but you can always skip them if that's how you roll. I watched everything on my first playthrough and skipped the events I already saw on my New Game Plus with the other character. I had a blast with the combat after the full squad joins your arsenal, but the game can feel a bit slow at the beginning, which is on par with most JRPGs. Overall, I had a fun time playing this game and interacting with certain party members. Scarlet Nexus deserves a solid 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching my review. I plan to do more videos like this in the future. There are a handful of games I'm looking forward to in the upcoming months, such as Monster Hunter Stories and SMT5.